you're relegated to doing that too? Yeah, she says, I've got to find somebody to do that. I said, you know not to ask me, right? She said, yes, I know. The phone would be in the pew here. I'd be picking it up.
I love it. I love it. All right, we are live.
Well, good morning. How are we today? I'm not convinced. Although I will cut you some slack because there's a lot of fellowship going on, and that's an awesome thing. love to hear it. Love to hear the buzz and all of the sharing and the activity that's going on. And so you are a blessing. My name is Butch. I'm one of the pastor elders here, and it's my great privilege to welcome you here this morning. I do want to start off with a caveat, though, to those that are online. Okay? No guarantees that the broadcast is going to last the whole time. We've got low battery and no plug-in, so bear with us. I think we're going to make it, but if we don't and we go offline, don't panic. It's just a dead battery on the phone. So that's the course of having so many people gone. So Sean is out this week. She's taking a little break, visiting family and getting to be grandma. So that's a good thing. We're grateful for that. For those of you here today that are visiting with us, first and foremost, welcome. Hope you feel welcome. We love the fact that you've chosen to come in to worship with us. We would just ask one thing, if you'd do us a favor. There's a card right in front of you in the pew back there. It says the card. Would you fill that out for us, just so that we have an opportunity to get to know you better? We'd like to be able to reach out and maybe have a cup of coffee if there's an opportunity, or lunch, whatever you prefer. But we love to do that because it gives us an opportunity to learn a little bit more about you, other than to say hi and, my name's Bob or whoever. And so we would love to do that and give you an opportunity to get to know us a little better too. If you have any questions or concerns or anything like that. So with that, just a few things in the life of Calvary Church Nampa. Things going on. We've got a student get-together on Friday, August 20th. And it's going to be at 6:30. And if you want information on that, I think there's a little bit of mystery around that, just a little bit. Contact Aaron or John. They're sitting right here in the second row there, so you can contact them. There's still some summer reconnects. Some are still here. I think you can tell by the heat. We've still got some summer going on here. So there's still some reconnect opportunities up there for those things. I'm looking through the list here. If you didn't get one of these handouts when you came in, I'd encourage you to get one before you go out. And guess what? Just check it out. Everybody says, we never know what's going on, or that wasn't in there, and it's been in there for 6 weeks. They're really there. So anyway, so in the way of that, also, I want to take a moment, and you'll notice that the pew here in front where the Snyder family usually sits is still vacant this week. Well, I do have some good news. They are recovering. Honors is feeling better. We were able to visit with him online today, this morning, and that was such a wonderful blessing. And I think he's turned the corner. And so, but that's no reason for us to stop praying for him. We need to continue to lift them up in prayer that God will restore them fully. I want to speak on behalf of their family that they appreciate the prayers and they miss you guys. I know for a fact, firsthand, that they miss you guys dearly and they would rather be here today if they could be. So keep them in your prayers. And we're going to, speaking of prayer, we're going to go to prayer now, and we're going to give this service over to the Lord, and we're going to praise Him with all that we have to give. So, Heavenly Father, thank you so much for today. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your forgiveness and all the hope that comes from knowing you. What an encouragement it is to know that we serve a living, risen Savior. Lord, we see testimony of your presence in each and every day, and we thank you for that. And we ask for your presence here this morning. We pray that your glory will shine through this, and that Jesus Christ would be on full display in everything we say, everything we sing, and everything we do. And may it be for your glory, for it's in his name we pray these things. Amen. All right, well, if you'll all stand with me, please. We're going to sing out some worship and praise this morning.
Blessed be your name in the land that is plentiful, with the streams of abundant flow. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name, when I found in the desert place, though I walk through the wilderness. Blessed be your name. blessing you pour out, turn back to praise. And when the darkness closes in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Blessed be your name. When the sun's shining down on me, when the world's all as it should be. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name. On the road marked with suffering, with faith in the offering. Blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour out, turn back to praise. And when the darkness closes in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. You give and take away. You give and take away. My heart will choose to say, oh, blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to praise. And when the darkness closes in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name.
And all God's people said, Amen. Amen. All right. You guys sound awesome this morning.
Has every ocean in his hand? Who
What this part of what the service is all about. This is our opportunity to worship Him through our giving. And may it truly be a time of worship for us, because we're not focused on the material part of this. That's not where God is. That's not where any of us should be, as this opportunity is for us. This is a time for our hearts to be poured out to Him, because remember, everything we have, everything we do, everything that we hope for is because of Jesus Christ, our risen, living, living Savior. So as we pass these plates and as we take this time and as the music plays, I would ask you to take the time not to chatter or visit with a neighbor, but focus on the one to whom we're offering our worship. Let's pray. Father, we need you. Not only do we love you and we praise you, but we need you. In every aspect of our lives, we need you. And Lord, my prayer is that everyone here within the sound of my voice will also raise up through their hearts. We want you. We desire you in all ways. And so, Lord, may the offerings that we lift up to you truly stem from a heart that loves you, desires to honor and glorify you in all that we do. And we're going to give you the glory, the honor, and the praise. The precious name of your Son, Jesus Christ, who gave all so that we might live. It's in His name.
Good morning.
For the summer months, our first through third grade kids will be worshiping with our families in the sanctuary. Children ages 4 through kindergarten may join their teachers to be dismissed to their Calvary Kids class. Please join me as we read God's Word. Our passage today is Psalms chapter 63, which can be found on page 274 of the Black Pew Bibles. If you need a Bible, please take one out of the pew. If you don't have one at home, please keep it as a gift from us. Again, the passage today is Psalms chapter 63. O God, you are my God. Earnestly I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh faints for you. As in a dry and weary land where there is no water, so I have looked upon you in the sanctuary, beholding your power and glory. Because your steadfast love is better than life, my lips will praise you. So I will bless you as long as I live. In your name I will lift up my hands. My soul will be satisfied as with fat and rich food, and my mouth will praise you with joyful lips. When I remember you upon my bed and meditate on you in the watches of the night, for you have been my help, and in the shadow of your wings I will sing for joy. My soul clings to you, your right hand upholds me. But those who seek to destroy my life shall go down into the depths of the earth. They shall be given over to the power of the sword. They shall be a portion for jackals. But the king shall rejoice in God. All who swear by him shall exult, for the mouths of liars will be stopped.
Thank you. Well, we have a tremendous privilege this morning. I want to take a moment to just say, Dan, thank you for offering your talents and gifts that God's given to you to share with us in this message this morning. And for those of you who don't know this man, this is Dan Whitehead. He's a dear friend. And God has gifted him with an ability to speak from his word and to preach to us. And we have the privilege of hearing that this morning. And so I want to just begin this with prayer and ask that God will direct us. Is that okay? All right. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much that you have entrusted us to be the messengers. I don't understand it, but we thank you for it. And Lord, we don't take it lightly. We ask that as we speak from your word, that it's just exactly as you would have us to speak. And I pray that you be with my brother Dan. I pray that you give him an extra measure of your spirit this morning. That he bring the message with power, with hope, with anticipation of what you've already done and what you're going to do. And we're going to give you the glory, the honor, and the praise. In the precious name of your Son, Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Good morning, friends.
Good morning.
You've all had that experience, right? Like right after you said you'd do something, you're like, why did I say I would do that? And that's a little bit how I feel this morning. I'm not sure that I feel adequate to do this. It's just outside of my comfort zone. I don't normally stand up in front of church and do these kinds of things. But what I do know is this. As I get into the Word of God, it enriches my life. And so I think simply I will just invite you to come along with me and see what I've been seeing these past few weeks as I've been spending a lot of time in this psalm. Now there is some good news. You know, Butch usually says that, 8 pages on both sides, makes for a sermon. So I've got just a little over 5. And the font is really big, so we're probably going to get out of here in good time today. So I just want to make sure you guys know that. Psalm 63. Find that in your Bibles, and we're gonna be there pretty much the whole time this morning. Pastor Stephen Cole says this psalm is one of the most well-loved psalms of all time. John Chrysostom, who was an early church father. He was the Archbishop of Constantinople in the 2nd century. And he said that it was decreed and ordained by the primitive church fathers that no day should pass without the public singing of this psalm. He also observed that the spirit and soul of the whole book of Psalms is contracted into this psalm. The ancient church had a practice of singing this psalm during their gatherings on the Sabbath. This was a very important song to the early church. And I think as we go through it, you guys are gonna feel some of the power of David's praise, worship, relationship with God as we go into this psalm. In my Bible, it has a title. It says a Psalm of David when he was in the wilderness of Judah. And that made me curious. I started thinking about, well, what's the deal with these titles? So I looked into that a little bit. So here's a little word about the titles that most of us have in our Bibles preceding the Psalms. There is speculation about them. There's not universal agreement as to whether or not these titles are inspired or whether or not they were some editor's addition at a later date. And so we can't say for sure what that means. But most do agree that these titles were added very early on in the canon of Scripture. So it's something that happened relatively quickly as the Scriptures, as the canon of our Bible was put together. And so I think we can safely consider them trustworthy. And if we do that, then we know a couple of things right off the bat here. The psalm is David's. It was written by him. And it was written while he was in the wilderness. So if we think about David's life and what happened to him, there are a couple of times when he was in the wilderness. Both hard times during his life. First was before he became king, and he was being hunted by Saul. And so he was out there hiding out because literally somebody was after him. And then the second time was a brief season after he had become king, and his son Absalom fomented a rebellion amongst the Israelites, and David had to flee Jerusalem. And he spent time in the wilderness again there. Now the psalm doesn't specifically say which one of those times this is. I'll give you my opinion. I'm going to lean towards the second, because in verse 11 he does refer to himself here as king. And so I'm going to take that to mean this happened while he was king already. And so I'm going to say, and I can't prove it, but I'm going to say, I think that this was during the time of Absalom, and when Absalom was seeking his life, actually. So he was in the wilderness. He was being hunted. It's probably an area east of Jerusalem, between the Hebron Mountains and the Dead Sea. The psalm itself says, a dry and weary land where there is no water. And I've not been to Israel, but I have read some things who say, yep, there are some places like that in Israel that are very dry. And that's no doubt where David was during this time. Now that makes this psalm more extraordinary. The place where he was and the circumstances that he was in makes this psalm even more extraordinary as we get into it and try to understand it. Oh God, you are my God. It's hard when you get past that phrase. Oh God, you are my God. And we use the word God there twice in English. In Hebrew, it's actually two different words. Oh God, Elohim, plural, triune God. You are my God, El. You are my El, singular. You are my mighty one. The word comes from a word that denotes something very strong, a mighty oak tree. Oh God, you are my God. This opening declaration is a clear and straightforward proclamation of David's relationship to God. And he says, I seek you earnestly. And the word there literally means early. I seek you early. And I don't think it means necessarily like early in the day, although that could certainly be true. I think what it means is I seek you first. I seek you above all else. I seek you earnestly, diligently, eagerly. It's David's number one desire to be with God. Charles Spurgeon says this. I think this is a great quote. He who longs for God longs for him now. If we truly long for God, if we truly yearn to be with God, that's a constant. It's now. It's something that's just always happening. Then he goes on to talk about that yearning in terms of thirst and in terms of what his soul needs and what his flesh needs, which I think is very interesting. He talks about his whole person. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh yearns for you. Every part of David was about being after God in this psalm. And the thirst of the soul can sometimes help pull the stubbornness of the flesh along and into that yearning of wanting to seek out God. So David was in a dry place physically, and I think he was probably in a dry place spiritually. He was being hunted. No doubt there were lots of things going on in his mind about where he was. And I think it's notable that God meets us in those times. God gets with us in those moments. And sometimes maybe those are the times we least feel like talking to him about it. And I have another quote from Spurgeon here that I think is awesome. He says this: learn from this and do not say, I will get into communion with God when I feel better, but long for communion now. It's one of the temptations of the devil to tell you not to pray when you don't feel like praying. Pray twice as much then. Mm-hmm. And so David, in this instance where he was physically and spiritually dry, was purposefully seeking God and looking to God. He says that, as I have seen you in the sanctuary, and no doubt David spent time in the tabernacle. I think David, he was a musician. He hung out with the singers. He hung out with the priests. He hung out in that place. And as I have seen you in the sanctuary, I see your power and glory now. A powerful statement about God's power and glory not being only contained in a building or a certain place, but in the wilderness, God's power and glory were there as well. Thus I have seen you in the sanctuary. I've seen your power and glory in the sanctuary. Now I see your power and glory in the wilderness. So that's kind of the beginning of those first two verses. David beginning to talk to the Lord about how he's feeling and all of these things. And then in the next three verses, 3, 4, and 5, he really gets caught up in praise. I mean, he really gets going here as he talks about things. Because your loving kindness is better than life, my lips will praise you. I will praise you because your loving kindness is better than life. Loving kindness, it's not a word maybe that we hear on the street every day, but it's a word that's very rich in meaning. It encompasses goodness, kindness, mercy, love, favor, faithfulness. All of those are a part of what that word means. It's all the really good stuff. And it's better than life itself. Spurgeon puts it this way: life is to many men a doubtful good. And we've probably all experienced that, right? There are people who say, I'm done. This life is not. It's doubtful. I don't like it. Loving kindness is an unquestioned boon. If we really experience loving kindness, it's way better than what life might have to offer. Life is but transient. Mercy is everlasting. Life is shared in by the lowest animals, but the loving kindness of the Lord is the peculiar portion of the chosen. God's desire to be in relationship with us and his desire to show his loving kindness to us is something that is ours. It is a peculiar portion of the chosen. And it is better than life itself. So David says, I will bless you as long as I live. As long as he has breath, he's going to bless the Lord. And I got stuck on that phrase a little bit. Bless the Lord. What does that mean? What does it mean to bless the Lord? We sang a couple of songs this morning where we used that kind of phraseology. Here's what John Piper says about blessing the Lord. He says, to bless the Lord is an exclamation of gratitude and admiration, an expression of praising thankfulness, to speak well of his greatness and goodness from the depth of my soul. Praising thankfulness. That's what David is pledging to do for life. I will bless the Lord as long as I have breath. And then he says, I'm going to lift up my hands to your name. Now, perhaps in here we have folks that have come from lots of different church backgrounds and different forms of worship and all those kind of things. Some of us are more inclined to lift our hands in worship. Some of us are not as inclined to do that. But in David's context, this was certainly a very normal thing to do. In the Hebrew context, it was very appropriate. It was an appropriate attitude of worship and of prayer to have your hands in the air. And it was displayed in anticipation of gratefully receiving something from God. And that's what David was saying here. Surrendering, anticipating what I'm going to receive from you. I will lift up my hands in your name. So he's gone through this time saying, your loving kindness is better than life. My lips will praise you. I'm going to lift up my hands in your name. And then he talks about what that brings to him. And he says, my soul is satisfied. In my version it says, as with marrow and fatness. And so in his communication to the Lord in praise, his thirsty soul is satisfied. Now it's worth saying that the Hebrews were perhaps more fond of fat than maybe we are today. And there are other cultures that are like that. I have friends who have served in Indonesia, and they tell me stories about being in a village, and they cook the pig, they roast the pig, and this big hunk of fat is brought to them as the honored guest, because that's the best part of the pig. It's just this big hunk of fat. And that's where the richness was. In my version it says marrow. I have a friend who drives me crazy because he breaks apart every chicken bone and sucks the marrow. Any marrow suckers out here? He breaks them and he sucks them, and he's like, this is the best part. It's so good. It's so rich, and I'm sure it is. It's where the blood is being produced. It's the rich, protein-rich part of the food. And so David is talking about how his soul has received that kind of richness and fullness from this relationship with God. He celebrates feeding on the best of the best. And then he even has more expressions of joy and praise. My mouth offers praises with joyful lips. These lips that have fed on this fatness and greatness, he says, I'm going to sing praises with these lips. He uses that expression in other places. One example, Psalm 71. He says, my lips will shout for joy when I sing praises to you. And so he is obviously conscious of that kind of praise and worship. Now the Psalms are songs, and as a musician, I really wish that the music had come down along with the words, so we could hear, what this thing really sounded like as they were singing it. But as you guys have read these words, you no doubt have songs going off in your head, right? And there's an older chorus that is going off in my head when I read this song, and I'm going to sing it. And so you guys can sing it with me if you know it. I don't have the words or anything like that, but they're right out of the song, all right? And the song goes like this. Sing it with me if you know it. Thy loving kindness is better than life. Thy loving kindness is better than life. My lips shall praise thee, thus will I bless thee. I will lift up my hands unto thy name. I lift my hands, Lord. I lift my hands, Lord, unto thy name. I lift my hands, Lord, unto thy name. My lips shall praise thee, thus will I bless thee. I will lift up my hands unto thy name. I don't think that's how it sounded when they sang it then, but these are songs. We put music to these things, and it helps us record them, right? They go inside of us, and it helps us to keep them. So he finishes that little section there, those 3 verses, lots of praise to the Lord. And in my musical head, I feel like the song changes a bit here as we go into the next few verses. And there's a bit of a change of tone. And if I had to write the music to this, I would say I picture now us going from a kind of a more high, raucous time of praise to something a little bit slower, a little bit more like adoration, something that would be a little bit more moderate in tone. And he starts out by saying, when I remember you on my bed, I meditate on you in the night watches. For you have been my help, and in the shadow of your wings I sing for joy. My soul clings to you. Your right hand upholds me. There's something about the night, and I think David wants us to pick up on that. Things get quiet. We may be more able to hear the still small voice. Our mind settles down. It can be a wonderful time to spend with the Lord. Spurgeon says, if day's cares tempt us to forget God, it is well that night's quiet should lead us to remember him. And David goes a little bit beyond remembrance, and he goes on into meditation. He says that I meditate on you on my bed in the night watches. Again, I think it was customary for David to hang out in the tabernacle. And it was a part of the priest's job to be there in the night watches. The Hebrews have 3 watches: first watch, middle watch, morning watch. And during those night watches, there was somebody in the temple being careful that worship to the Lord never ceased. And so I think David participated in that. I think he knew about that. There's probably times he woke up and said, I'm going over there. Going over, I'm going to spend some time in the temple during the night watches. And he talks about it in a lot of other places. Psalm 16:7 says, I will bless the Lord who has counseled me. Indeed, my mind instructs me in the night. Psalm 42:8 says, the Lord will command his loving kindness in the daytime, and his song will be with me in the night, a prayer to the God of my life. Psalm 119:55 says, O Lord, I remember your name in the night and keep your law. I remember your name in the night. Spurgeon says this is a grand use of memory to furnish us with the proofs of the Lord's faithfulness and lead us onward to a growing confidence in him. As we think on him, we realize that all he has done and that he is our help and protection. Many times the Israelites were instructed to remember, to put stones on top of one another and set up a place of remembrance. And I think that's what David is going after here. In the quiet, in the night. Remember who I am. Remember what I've done for you. Remember. And then he goes on to this picture of protection. Butch spoke to us about it last week. No, last week I wasn't here. 2 weeks ago. That idea of a hen who brings her chicks underneath her wings. And he uses that kind of language again here, and that place of safety. And he adds on to the end of it, when I'm there, I sing for joy. When I'm in that place, I sing for joy. That safety produces singing in him. I think that's still a part of us. When we feel safe, we sing. When we're in the shower, when we're in the car, you know, there's nobody else around to judge us, you know, for it. And in that place of safety, we sing. You know, we sing like nobody's listening, you know, and we do that. And David here, as he feels that place of safety, being underneath the Lord's wings, he sings for joy. It's a place where we can give full voice to our praise. And then in verse 8, the last part of this little section, he talks about the intimate parts of this relationship that he has with God. My soul clings to you. This has the idea of being pressed in, glued to. He's that close to God. And then he feels this strong right hand of God holding him up. And of course, we do a whole study on the righteous right hand of God, and there's a lot of scriptures about that. My favorite one is in Isaiah 41:10. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not anxiously look about you, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Surely I will help you. Surely I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. I loved sitting and thinking about that for a while, and as I did, even though I'm older now, a memory came back to me of sitting in church with my dad. With his arm around me, his hand resting on me. And that hand to me was so big, so strong. I can remember playing with his fingers, thinking how big they were. That's what God wants us to feel. Crawl into my lap. Feel my arms around me. Feel the strength of my hand. Nobody can get you here. Nobody can touch you. So David says, I feel that strong right hand. I feel that holding me up. Our Heavenly Father wants us to feel that way when we're with Him. As we move to the end of the book, of the chapter, it changes tone again. And maybe these last few verses are not quite as comfortable for us. is definitely different. David was in the wilderness. Somebody was after him. Somebody who hated him enough to want to kill him. That's how severe this was. Not many of us have probably experienced that kind of thing in our life where somebody's pursuing us with that desire. These men were bent on destruction. And I think that comes from the destroyer, from Satan, from the evil one, whose main goal is to kill and destroy. We should never forget it. That's what he wants to do. And what's ironic about that is that bent towards destruction will be the same thing that destroys the destroyer. And so David prophesies here about what will happen to these people. He actually says they will be delivered to the power of the sword. That word "delivered" there in the original language talks about, has the implication of a liquid flowing, water flowing, or blood flowing, being poured out. So literally being destroyed or being killed by the sword. In Matthew 26, Jesus says, after Peter attacked the guy that was there when Jesus was being arrested in the garden, he says, "Put your sword back into its place, for all those who take up the sword shall perish with the sword." And I think it's interesting, although David was a warrior, he was a man of war in many instances. In these two instances where he was in the wilderness, he specifically did not take revenge into his own hands. These people that were after him to kill him, in both of these instances, he had opportunity to take his own revenge. And both times, he said, "No, that's the Lord's to do." And so, while this is perhaps unsettling to us that David is saying, it's going to go bad for these guys. It's not going to go well for the people that are pursuing me. I think it's more about where those people and those men were in their relationship to the Lord, than it is about them being after David. And I think in a way it shows how David continued to want the best for people, everybody, including these people that were after his life. And if he could have, he would have wanted to see them come into the same kind of relationship with God that he had with God. It's not a pretty end that he pictures for them. He says their body will be consumed by the jackals, by the scavengers, and it's really not pretty. But it's also, I think, a reality. And again, I don't think it's what David would desire. And he kind of proved that by saying, "Far be it from me to touch these men." That's God's place. But he gives reference to what it will be like for people who choose not to enter into a relationship with God. And then he ends just by affirming his allegiance to God and his trust in God. And that last verse there in verse 11, he says, "But the king will rejoice in God, and everyone who swears by him will glory. For the mouths of those who speak will be stopped." So, in the end, he's saying, my allegiance is with God. Those who have that allegiance, those who pledge the oath to him, will receive glory. I'm not exactly sure what all of that means, what glory, all that glory encompasses. I think it encompasses a lot. I think it encompasses life and life abundant. I think it encompasses eternity and eternal life. All of those kinds of things. And that's what David is promising for those who put their trust in God. The same cannot be said for those who are deceitful. It says in that last verse. Spurgeon says, "See the difference between the mouth that praises God and the mouth that forges lies. The first shall never be stopped, but shall go on singing forever. And the second shall be made speechless at the far of God. So those who have that relationship with God, those who are praising Him with their lips, those who are singing songs of joy, that praise will go on forever. That will go on forever. Those who have chosen not to recognize who God is and enter into that relationship will at some point cease to speak. And that's what David says here as he ends the song. Oh God, you are my God. That relationship, that intimacy, the depth and strength with which David praises his Lord, even while in the wilderness of body and soul, that expression of want and desire to know more and more of Him. Who of us doesn't want to be like that? I want to yearn for God, and if I yearn for Him, I yearn for Him now. It's an all day, every day thing. If that's not part of your experience, I'd encourage you to spend some more time with this psalm. I've been reading it now every day for a month. And it speaks more and more to me about what kind of depth of relationship God really wants to have with me. And I would encourage you to do the same thing if you're needing to be refreshed in your relationship with the Lord. Let's pray. Precious Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for Psalm 63. Thank you for this song that David wrote and that he sang. Thank you for the pictures that he paints there for us of what it means to be your child. Thank you for being our God, our strong one, the one who holds us up with his hand, the one in whom we could hide in your shadow. All of these wonderful pictures that David paints for us here. We praise you for that. Lord, help us to develop and cultivate that yearning in our soul and body so that we might know you better, know you more, and as we do that, we will love you more. We praise you and pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Well, thank you, Dan. I think I speak for everyone when I say what a blessing it was. And oh God, you are my God. And I will ever praise you. If you're here today and Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, then that is a true statement. There's nothing truer. You have eternity to praise Him. And that's why we take the time now to remember what Jesus Christ did so that we can pray that prayer and sing that song with joy in our hearts. That's what this is all about. And so, believer, as we take this time, my prayer is that this isn't, oh, well, this is this time of the service that we do this and we don't fall into a routine, because that's not what we want. What we need to do is to remember the sacrifice that Jesus made for us. Without that, our purpose for being here today is futile at best. Because of what Jesus Christ did on the cross at Calvary, we can celebrate. And we can remember what He did for us. And the precious life that He gave up so that we can have life. A life that was sinless. He didn't want to live death. We did. But He paid with His life our sins. That's amazing. So if you're here today and you have Christ as Lord and Savior, this is for you. This is your time to remember that and to cherish that. It should be the most important thing in your life is your relationship with Jesus Christ. But if you're here today and you don't know Jesus, then let me begin by saying you need to know the Savior. If we can get to heaven without Christ, then why did God send His Son to die for us? He wouldn't have. No one would have. It would have been a comedy at best, but it wasn't because of that. Before He formed the earth, He knew He place. It was already enacted. And he knew that we were going to sin. But he sent his son anyway. And he created us anyway. There's love. So if you're here today and you don't know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, I would challenge you. During this time, I lovingly say, please don't partake in this, because this doesn't have meaning for those that don't have Christ as Lord and Savior. And that's not to say someone's better or someone's worse or anything. It's not that at all. It's just that this represents something that's taken place in each of the lives of the believers. So if you don't know Christ, I encourage you to take this time to reflect on the words that my brother Dan spoke here today. Maybe turn to that psalm again as we do this and reflect on that and ask yourself this. Why have I chosen not yet to receive Christ? What's stopping me? What's stopping me? I asked two folks that this week. And they said nothing. We sat there and we prayed and accepted Christ. What a beautiful moment that was. That can be for you too if you don't know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. So believer, I would ask that we take this moment as the music plays to reflect. If there's things that you need to settle with your God, then settle it with Him. And then when you're ready, come up here. I'll have these trays opened up. Come up here and take them. I do have to say one thing so that everybody understands. It's a little bit different than it was in the past. There are 2 cups. They're stacked on each other. Take both cups. The bottom cup, if you can remove it, has the wafer in it. The top cup has the fruit of the vine. Okay, so take both cups. That way you don't have to reach into the plate and get your fingers on it. It's just a little bit more sanitary, and so we acknowledge that. So there will be a gluten-free in the middle and the regular ones on the side. But when you're ready, you come down the middle aisle, take your cup and go back to your seat. And when you're ready, take of that bread and of that fruit of the vine. And I just want you to remember that as you take the bread, the night Jesus was betrayed, He took the bread with His disciples sitting around us, and He said, I want you to hear what I have to say. He says, this is my body. This is a representation of my body. And He broke a piece off, and He said, this body which is broken for you. And it was something that they didn't understand at that moment in time fully. But after His crucifixion and His resurrection, they fully understood just exactly what He was talking about. We have the privilege of looking back on it and seeing it, and we can understand that He was talking about His body being nailed to a cross, broken for you and for me. And then He took the fruit of the vine and He said, this is a representation of my blood which is shed for you. And the Bible tells us, it's very clear, without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sin. And in every case, even before Christ sacrificed Himself in the Old Testament, when those lambs were sacrificed, it was the innocent paying the price for the guilty. You know how beautiful it was, because Jesus was the one final perfect sacrifice. When He hung on that cross, with His last breath, He said, it is finished. Folks, He completed His mission to perfection. And that's what this is about. So when you're ready, you come, you take those cups, you go back to your seat. Remember Him as often as you do this. please stand as we sing our closing.
One day you'll make everything new. Jesus, one day you will bind every wound. For things shall all pass away, no more tears. One day you'll make sense of it all. Jesus, one day every question resolved. Every anxious thought left behind, no more fear. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. One day we will see face to face Jesus, every vision of grace. In a moment we shall be changed on that day. One day we'll be free from envy. Jesus, one day all this struggle will cease. We will see your glory revealed on that day. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory.
Have a great week, and God bless you all.